Get started. So this particular panel has to do with what's called Phase 2, and that's because when this village was originally conceived, it was the idea was to build it in stages and make sure that each stage was running properly before we went to the next one, and also the money that it would take to construct everything that we wanted to have here in one shot just wasn't attainable. Like other people have said, we've never received any government money. This is all done through donations and the money we're able to generate here at the store. And so based on that, it's taken longer than we would have liked, but that time was necessary. Really quickly, before Ed, I know has a lot to say about the technical and design aspects, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the social aspect of the expansion of the village. One of the questions I get sometimes from people is, why do you only have 4 people living there? Or why don't you fill it up? Why don't you have 9 houses there? Or they just don't understand why it's taken so long. And when we made the deal originally for this project with the city, the idea was that the city has kind of like veto power or the ability to pull the plug on this at any time that they feel it's not under control. And so we wanted to kind of phase in, you could say, this entire village. We wanted to do it incrementally so that people would realize, okay, there's a few people living here, there's no problem. There's a few more here, there's still no problem. There's a few more here, everything's still going fine. And that way, we weren't dynamically, just kind of popping in with a bunch of people and just changing the whole character of this area. Building houses was the simplest thing that we do. Learning how to function together effectively as an organization and live together and kind of coexist in this space. Even for those of us who don't live here, we still have to be incorporated into the social fabric of this place. That takes time. We've had a lot of conflicts over the years. We've had some points in our history where things have been really rocky and there's been distrust and certain individuals in the group not wanting to speak to other individuals in the group. And we realized if you have a toxic environment where people are not functioning well together, simply bringing more people into that environment is just going to make it exponentially worse. And so one of the things that's been a goal before we get to any more physical construction is to kind of have the social cohesion, which is the real framework of this place, to have that in place. And we have made, I think, incredible progress in learning how to work together and resolve conflicts. And I feel now we are in a position where we can begin to bring new people in, and it won't exacerbate chaos. It will simply be bringing new people into a harmonious environment and showing them how to integrate. And I think we're at that point where Phase 2 not only makes sense from a practical standpoint, but makes sense in terms of the kind of social structure that we're trying to create here. Because you can't, the only way this is going to be reproducible is if we demonstrate that it can be done. And just building a bunch of tiny house villages everywhere and filling them with formerly homeless people could be a nightmare if you don't have an organizing principle in place that promotes harmony as opposed to discord. So that's all I want to say, and I'll pass to Gene.
A process.
Yeah. Nicely.
So I just want to, from a resident's perspective, talking about Phase 2, I started, I didn't get a chance to say it in the last panel, so I'm going to use this. I started after all the encampments when we first got this property, and we were cleaning it up, mainly out of my interest in the garden beds. And I had seen the original plans were, as Lucas said, throwing a bunch of houses into the parking lot of this place. And then Ed came along and made it to like it's really like, I have to give Ed a lot of credit, like how he really, when he designed it, how we operate as people, and like our habits and how we move, like studying how we move, and this has been alluded to before, but I'm going to reiterate, like phase 2 is really important for the community part of it. Like right now we have a temporary kitchen. Some of us don't cook in here because of the sawdust. You know, we don't want to eat pieces of wood with our food. So it's fiber, but we just don't want to.
And the garden hose is kind of a rude shower, you know. That's what we have right now.
But it's really important, not only for the community room for the people living here, but also like we have plans to involve other groups where they can have a meeting space, and having that area where we can come together as a community, not just occupy, but the Madison community is really important. That's all you have.
Okay. Yes, it's been an amazing journey. I just want to say that, you know, here at 5 years, it only recently dawned on me that this whole episode illustrates one of my favorite things in the world, which is what I call a non-hierarchical learning community. And it's what my son and I experienced at the fishing group on the Yahara River. It's where everybody arrives for their own purpose, and it gets worked out to everyone's satisfaction, and it's a very level, completely level and voluntary organization. And it's slower and messier, as we've heard, but it gets you to a different place. You don't get here by a normal process. So it's been a privilege to be involved and to stay involved. So yeah, I've been involved since the Reynolds Park episode. I was kind of in and out during the 31 itinerant sites for Occupy over a couple of years there. But when the property got bought here, then it was really time to get on it, and I was really inspired by it. And I love that we're a block from my church, James Reeb Unitarian, and I think that alignment and partnership has been really one of the key anchor things that's helped us, and you know, having East High being an ally, and you know, the assets in this little neighborhood are terrific. And it's like the ideal demographic also. You know, it's people that they're all working towards something. I haven't met a silver spoon person in this neighborhood yet. They all understand about working your way into something. And what Lucas said about not having the money, the budget power to do the whole project to completion originally is part of the story, but the other part of the story is that the fact that we've been able to do so much with not very much money is that we've had an immense amount of sweat equity and volunteer labor and help and materials and all of that. And we're going to need similar for the next step, but it's not just about the money. And without the community capacity that was already here from being this transient community, I don't think it could have happened, but it happened really beautifully. And I won't be able to move pavers this time, I don't think. Sciatica issue, but I get to wave and watch. But anyway, so as been mentioned before, we have an overall master plan that was, established with the city as part of this whole plan development, and this is a not quite current version of that, but all the essential parts are here. So we started with approval for these 3 houses, which are on the 3rd Street frontage, and improvements to the main building, and that was our phase 1. We were able to get an administrative amendment to phase 1 after a couple of years of good time here, trouble-free time, to add the 2 more houses that Sophia alluded to. So we're up to 5 placed, but we could not go beyond that without adding this important piece. This is what our phase 2 addition, as was alluded to before, is adding capacity for kitchen and dining, laundry, another shower stall, and a general kind of flexible meeting space, and a three-season porch. I've always had a front porch in the design because at the intersection of First and Main here, as a social thing. It's interesting, I had this sitting circle proposed at the corner originally, and this is part of that negative magical thinking about homeless people. The city and others hated that. What? You can't have your people coming out there. You can't have them talking to the neighbors. So that's the kind of craziness you get to when you have what I call negative magical thinking, which, we all know about negative magical thinking when it comes to black people, when it comes to women, when it comes to differently able people, and so on. And it's really virulent in some quarters about homeless people. There are these stories. Some of the fears here were that homeless people poop more than others and don't know what to do with it. And so we had plans to have composting toilets in all the units, and we gave up on that because we could see that this little problem about beliefs about poop was going to get in the way of our timely approval. So we just let go of it. And I'm surprised that the residents don't seem to mind the 25-foot walk in the cold to get to their bathroom in the middle of the night. But so far, it's not been a deal breaker, so that's pretty cool. So anyway, that's the plan for what's to be added, and this is a current schematic of what that is going to look like. We're here in the shop. We have our retail shop. We have our three bathrooms, two of which have showers. And then what this will do is wrap around the back corner of the building. Here's the front porch. Here's a side room with a third shower and a washer dryer area there. And then we've got a kind of a galley kitchen, and it's not showing here, but I'm going to have a mobile kitchen island here that can store against the wall or come out for more functional cooking. And then we'll have a dining area, and we'll have our more flexible community room, and then a multi-fold door that we can close off the meeting room function for room for maybe 12, 14 people. And it'll wrap around the existing building. We had from the beginning, for urban design, you have to specify all the materials and colors and elements of your exterior and all of that for their approval. So this is a side view from the north side of this new piece and that front porch, and then here's the end view of the front porch from this the side street over here. And part of how we got approval, I believe, is that we had some very brilliant people, including President Clemente, who was very sensitive about what design signals, mean to people. And so when we were developing the basic house design, even before we had the village here, we made them look kind of like little cottages. I see a lot of other homeless communities, and they let the architects do this, new modern industrial thing, metal panels and shed roofs, and they don't look like houses, a lot of them. They look more like backyard sheds or industrial something or whatever. And I think an important thing that we did right here was we made, because we understood about acceptance. Now, of course, none of those other ones are located in a neighborhood either. As far as we know, we're still the only one in the country that was able to successfully locate functionally in a neighborhood, not out by the airport or the trash transfer station or brownfield somewhere. Having a familiar residential look to things and certain important clues. What Trina's brilliance was when we were rolling out the half-finished first house at our little workshop, and we were trying to really get people excited about what we were doing. She insisted that we get shutters on the windows, little flower box under the windows, and she brought little pots of peonies or something, and then a porch light. And those little domestic cues, they do very much change your perception. And all of it those are ways into the, your sense of home and your sense of respectability and whatever you want to call it. But you know, we weren't looking like outsiders. We were doing, on purpose, kind of a conventional, traditional, heartwarming look to things. And that allowed people to get past those other little mental problems. Because a lot of this process was about, you know, I figured this out long ago. I always, you know, we architects think, well, coming up with the great solution or the design is that's the thing that we're not lacking here, right? But, you know, it became clear to me some time ago that you have to look at the social and economic fields and make some breakthrough on those areas, or you can't even, you're never going to get to the opportunity to do the clever building. And then that stuff actually is completely ineffective unless you get to this really, the back half of the brain stuff, these beliefs and prejudices and fears. You have to address that emotional field first. And, you know, I think part of how we got to where we got was we took enough time with the neighborhood with these 5 community meetings and 2 other special meetings close in, and the other presentations at the city, to give people time to really think about it and get over it. There's a thing that we all do when you first are presented with something that's unfamiliar, is you have a protective reaction. You're going to likely have a more negative reaction in the first 20 minutes or half an hour. That's emotional. But that will clear after that amount of time. So a lot of this was about letting people get that out of them and get beyond it and get back to having access to the front half of their brain as well, so that their heart and soul and their brain could work together. So that's a really important thing I've learned through this project, and it applies to lots of things. I mean, anytime you're trying to present something new or work with any kind of audience on any kind of issue, if it's structured such that you're asking people to buy in too soon, you're going to end up with rejection. And so I think I love that way we did it. Brenda was amazing in coming up with this protocol for the meetings, where she took down, transcribed everything that was said in our meetings, put it up on our website within a day or two, and we had responses within a few days after that to all of those points. And any of those that I could check off that were design pertinent, I did my best to reflect somehow in the design. And so people felt heard because they were heard. You know, we didn't just go through it as an exercise. So we like it that the city now uses our process and our results as a little gentle stick to motivate the normal commercial developers, who generally like to cakewalk through this process and act like they're listening and do, you know, all of that, and then do what they want. So I think we've maybe changed the ground somewhat in how it gets done in general. But, you know, it was I think it was a transparent and a real heart-based process, and that made a difference.
You want to take questions?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, we can take questions.
You didn't introduce yourself, and we
Oh.
came after the
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
first panel.
I'm Ed Kuharski, and I'm a solo architect here in Madison. Do business as Green Design Studio, and so I work mostly here on the east side where I live. Most of my projects are a mile from home, so I'm trying to be as local as I can. And this is about as local as it gets. And this is a way to start something good. And I do see it as a kind of a demonstration project for a number of things. You know, this is not just providing shelter. This is about showing the power of community. And, you know, things I learned from my other work with the homeless community and those who help is that if you know where they are and you go out in the woods, there are woods campers, and they organize themselves as traditional villages always have. So you have maybe 4 or 5 individual tents, and then you'll have the communal tent. That's the food and anything else that's shared. And we basically organize that way as an itinerant community for all those months and years that we were being chased around the county. But that's really the essential format here. We've got our shared service and we've got our individual, but it's not, each of those tents wasn't trying to have everything in it, and each of our tiny homes is not trying to have everything in it. It's trying to have the stuff that's most important as personal space and personal stuff. I like to describe what you can do in your unit as about what you could do in your half of the dorm room if you went to a college that had shared dorm rooms, except more privacy.
The thing I'm really curious about, I think the first gentleman who spoke, you talked about conflict resolution. And in every group I've ever been part of, there's conflict. And I'd be interested in sort of how did you work through that? What helped, you keep moving together, living together, and acting together?
Well, I will say we spent the first several years, up until just recently, kind of winging it. And a lot of insults were thrown back and forth, a lot of tempers flared, and what's that? 2 o'clock meetings. Yeah, we had
2 in the morning.
Yeah, we had times where there'd be an emergency, and we'd all come, and it'd be like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's like we really don't want to deal with this right now, but we had to because we're self-governing, right? And so.
That's too much like rapping in the dorm.
Yeah. So the idea is that we realized we needed to develop a conflict resolution policy, and it needed to be simple. We're still in the testing phase of it, believe it or not. It's even after all this time, it's still not a real solid thing. But the problem is when you go to reference this type of thing, right? You want to know, okay, how do other organizations deal with conflict? Well, most organizations are very hierarchical, which means you have a mediator or a manager, and you know, in a conflict dispute, people air their thing, but then the manager is going to make the decision, or the administrator, and that's just simply how it is. We don't have anybody in that position here. I mean, Brenda and I are presidents of this organization, right? But that means absolutely nothing in terms of the power that we have. I mean, she gets 1 vote, I get 1 vote, Gene gets 1 vote. There's no difference. And so the only thing, I think the reason I noticed, I was watching, just a real quick digression, I'm watching these old videos, and I'm the president year after year after year after year, and I don't campaign, right, I don't campaign for this. I keep saying it, does anybody else want to do it? And I think the reason they keep picking me is because the only thing the president really has to do is give speeches, and nobody wants to do it. So they keep saying, I even skipped the last meeting where they had the election, and I came back to find out I was elected. I just can't get out of there. So anyway, the point is, we developed a conflict resolution system based on based on a non-hierarchical principle, where it isn't so much a mediator deciding what's right and wrong or what's just. The mediator's function is simply to help facilitate communication between the two parties, and they come up with an equitable resolution. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Not a question, but what I've observed so far today is that you folks, and I would include the neighborhood association, have been, I came up with a word for it, you're leading by practicality, right? You know, when you're in a conversation with a conservative person, they're going to stake out that I'm the most practical person in the room, right? And my favorite phrase now in local government is evidence-based policymaking. Base your policy on evidence. And what you've done in this 5th year, right, is you've stacked up 5 years worth of non-chaotic, self-government functioning, showing the way. And that's evidence. But yeah, I mean, you're here.
Yeah.
And nothing disastrous. So,
Right.
I mean, that's a piece of evidence, you know, that you can show and appeal to what Ed was saying, that frontal part of the brain, you know, the conservative guy that thinks he's the most
A
practical.
useful thing if you can keep it working, you know?
In reality, the status quo is the least practical situation because we can't keep going this way.
Right.
So I'm just liking loving what I'm doing so far. Keep on that track.
Yeah. Yeah, I think empirical reality beats ideology any day. And I try to, I mean, a lot of people might, from the outside, might think we're all super radical leftists or something, and maybe some of us are, but that has very little to do with what we do on a day-to-day basis. We're not ideological. We're just driven by, here's the challenge we face, how do we overcome it? And here's the next challenge we face, how do we overcome that? We don't have any prescribed dogma, we just, other than it should be as democratic as possible and as libertarian, not in the right-wing American parties, but in the horizontal decision making as possible.
Murray Bookchin style.
Yeah.
Egalitarian.
There you go. Egalitarian. Yes.
I call it citizen direct action. It occurs below and without benefit of government, basically. And that's, our freedom and our success and our just being here and having actually 5 years done, it comes to the fact that we made no effort to go for a grant or for really any, the only thing we did with the government was to have them agree to not get in our way. And they did that in a very constructive way, I thought. It only took 5 months. 5 months to the approval and then some more months to satisfy those 52 conditions. But, the fact that we've done it independently through private means and efforts and through self-help is how we have succeeded. And that's a model I really love. Many of the good enterprises I know, including our church, for instance, we're all driven by our own internal commitments. Here there was a lot of sweat equity. You're going to value and protect and defend it more when you've moved a bunch of those 200-pound tiles and a few cubic yards of sand and gravel and mulch and 200-pound timbers and whatever. You get invested. And sweat equity is a real thing.
Have East High and James Reeb had a role in things here?
Why don't you answer that, Gene?
East High School, yeah, absolutely. I can't say enough good things about James Reeb. They're just the whole congregation has just been fantastic. Twice a year they come out and volunteer, whether it's painting fences, shoveling dirt. East High School, we're not as involved with them. They built a house for us. We do engage with the students almost on a daily basis since we've had a basketball hoop out here, and they'll go to Quick Trip for lunch and then stop by here and have their lunch and shoot some hoops, and that's my favorite thing about Occupy right now is that the students stop by and they can come by, like they ride their bikes here on Saturdays and Sundays, obviously not today. But just like last week, a kid rode his bicycle here and to shoot some hoops and just sit outside and have his food and drink and so and it's a safe spot. They don't.
No gang wars here?
A 3-on-3, 3 versus 3 game might be.
That's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah, that's about as bad as it gets. But.
Yeah, I'm first time visiting here, and I'm just really impressed. And here I'm also sitting in this amazing shop that I'm curious about. I used to work in a wood shop way back, when I just got out of high school, and I see you making some things to sell. Can you talk about?
Yeah. So I was just looking at on my Facebook. I have memories. So there's pictures showing up, and then I was looking at the ribbon cutting ceremony, and this whole place is just empty, and there's one saw, and but a lot of it has evolved through. We had a partnership with UW with their Department of Human Ecology, where they would have 8 to 12 students come here, and it was getting really like we were so disorganized, and like we'd spend half an hour just looking for tools that we know are somewhere around. So in the winter we get kind of slow after the holidays. Not very many people stop by, and we don't have as many tours. So one winter, Bruce, actually all the shop managers, I drew up a design of how we could organize the shop so that it could be a community friendly. So like people would kind of be forced to talk to each other, and because some of us don't like to talk to people so much, and it was an exercise for myself, I guess. But also like the space, we have a very small space in here, so like our table saw is actually a table and a real table right now. And we have a lot of our tools put away, but the way we organized it, and like this wall wasn't being used at all, it was just an empty wall, and now we have these cabinets with paints and tools behind the pegboard there, and so it's really an evolution of just watching how people work in, like a large group of people work in here, and everything's on wheels, so we can move stuff around really easy and redesign on the fly.
Do you have some instruction as well? Like people come in and
Yeah, so we have a shop managers group, and so we have shop managers here, and we give like really the manager part of it is making sure no one hurts themselves. So
And they're just volunteers, there's no paid staff.
right, we don't have any paid staff, so yeah, that's a good point. The shop managers are volunteers, and we also like you can come in and say, they'll say, well, I know 2 of us anyway, like, what do you want to make? What are you interested in? And then we'll like, if we don't know how to do it, then we'll figure it out together. But we do have people here that, we know how to make a few things, so we can help instruct and instruct people on how to. The university was one of the greatest things ever, partners ever, because you have students who have never even seen power tools, and by the time the 8 weeks were over, they were just whipping out different products, cutting boards, glue ups, whatever, like they've been doing it their whole lives. So
And that goes in the store then?
yeah, then they would go into the store.
Yeah.
Can we interrupt? Because the
Yep,
great
the
Gene
great Gene
Grannies
Grannies are here.
Yesterday.
Yep.
All right.
We're gonna